And it feels good. It feels good that for 3 years, CNN-News18 has been number one. We're catering to a slightly different, slightly more intelligent audience. What's happening this week, right? Everybody's talking about the mock drills. Hey, listen, I'm younger than you.
I'm ageless, baby.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I started in radio. I mean, you know this.
Yeah.
And I had a radio jock name.
Okay.
I was not called Zakka Jacob.
Then?
I was called the Zackster. I would kill for a radio station like this.
Good morning.
Morning. Good morning.
Good morning, Delhi with Sarthak.
That is my name. That's your tune into ladies. 94.3 Radio 1. And today, of course, in the studio, it's going to be sharp, baby, because the double-edged sword of news is being swished around because we have the venerable Zakka Jacob in the studio. Of course, he has a fancy designation, but I have the honor of calling him a friend. Zakka, finally, we get you into a radio studio. Finally, it comes full circle because this is where the career had started from.
I know. I'm back in a radio station after like 25 years.
25 years.
I started at All India Radio in 2001. Yeah, so 24 years.
Wow.
And clearly it's changed. I mean, you got books and you
Yeah.
got posters and
Of
you got
course.
AC/DC. That hasn't changed.
That hasn't changed. It's just that
Yeah.
computers instead of cassettes.
Yeah, I know. So we used to have this big console.
Yeah.
And it was a real pain sort of managing the console because, you're
Absolutely.
doing multiple things at the same time.
Yeah.
But clearly computers are...
But we
are
felt
here.
like gods, no? We felt like gods.
Yeah, you fade in and fade out. Yeah.
The fade ins and fade outs, but you've faded in a lot of success to the news channel that you're now part of. CNN News 18 has now. It is now in its third year running, yes?
Yep.
And right at the top of the helm of affairs, what is the official designation that Zakka Jacob carries on the visiting card?
Well, it says managing editor. The backside it says friend of Sarthak.
Of course, yeah.
But yeah.
With a caricature as well.
I mean, we've known each other a long time.
Yeah.
So, look, I'm very happy and sort of glad where we are in this journey. It was a difficult one. It happened right after COVID because, the world as we know it was upended. News as we know it was upended. And it feels good. It feels good that for 3 years, CNN-News18 has been number one. And I think one thing that I'm very proud of, other than, the number one embellishment and all of that, is that I think we're catering to a slightly different, slightly more intelligent audience. And I think they are demanding very different content from us, and they're demanding more intelligent content from us. And I'm happy that we are able to provide that to them.
The important thing, of course, to discuss would be playing devil's advocate, would be the fact that, the relevance of televised media is increasingly being put under question. A lot of people say that this is also a sort of, a pit of their own digging as far as the newscape is concerned. You joined when it was all analog.
When they still had consoles.
when those consoles from radio were actually
yeah.
in the PCR. How has the news scenario... we'd like you to take the managing editor hat off and put on a newsman's hat off, because I know how passionate you are.
Yeah,
I've seen that firsthand. How, according to you, has that scenario changed from the time when we could not put anything up without at least two references from either side to now, which is 3 points of suspension?
So Sarthak, look, I mean, I think speed has changed. Clearly, social media is outpacing what television is trying to do. But ultimately, when the big story happens, I think people are still coming back to traditional forms of news. Like, for example, what's happening this week, right? Everybody's talking about the mock drills. And there are all kinds of stuff that's floating around on WhatsApp and other social media. But they're coming back to traditional sort of television or newspapers or established digital news sites to check, hey, what should I do? I mean, what's like the protocol? Should I rush to the ATM and withdraw money? Should I go to the petrol bunk and, fill up my car? So there's a lot of... So people generally... There are two things that drive news viewers, right? There's either fear or it's hope. Either of these two things. So I think when big stories break and when big stories happen, people almost reflexively, instinctively turn to sources that they trust. And that source is not necessarily social media or WhatsApp or any of those things. So I think that relevance is definitely there. But the way the business has changed, I mean, it's completely changed. Like I said,
Of course.
analog tapes to consoles. We don't have any of that anymore.
Values, Zakka, and also the fact that the world, for us, change in generation used to be about a decade or a decade and a half. Now generations seem to be changing in like a quarter of the time.
I know.
5 years and you don't know what anyone's
There's
talking about.
Gen Z and Gen Alpha and now Gen Beta apparently. so my kid, she's going to be 13. She's Gen Z. And she's like at the borderline of Gen Z and Gen Alpha. All her friends happen to be Gen Alpha. So yeah.
You know,
we didn't even know these things existed when we were in school. Or
we
college.
were just like Zakka and Sarthak.
Yeah, that's it.
We were a generation on ourselves. So, and of course, we ruled the world because we were young, which was wonderful. But you know, the whole numbers game seems to have picked up. At one point of time, credibility used to be a big thing, and numbers not that much so to speak. And you were talking about the fact that there's a certain kind of trust that legacy media and traditional media has built over decade upon decade of sheer hard work. Do you think that that's eroding because of the speed that you also mentioned?
No, so I think what's happening, Sarthak, is people are moving to social media. That's become sort of the primary point of receiving information, knowing what's happening around you. And then, of course, if it's big enough, then they're tuning into television. If they have a doubt of what they've seen something on Instagram, or they've seen something on Facebook or whatever else social media kids are on these days, they want to then, come back to
Just
to
betrayed
TV
your age by saying Facebook, man.
Hey, listen, I'm younger than you, so I can afford to say that.
I'm ageless, baby.
Yeah.
But do carry on.
But, so I think what's happening is they're going to social media. I mean, they're getting their primary source of information from social media, but they're also smart enough to figure out that you don't believe everything that comes on social media. So who do you then turn to? You have to turn to traditional media.
But then there is also the fact that today there is an assault of information. The information that we would take a bus for, go issue 5 books for, is now the first paragraph of Wikipedia without having had to spell it as well, because Google will ask, did you mean?
No, kids these days are not even going to Google and Wikipedia. They're going to ChatGPT.
That's true.
Yeah, or they're going to Perplexity. I mean, I use artificial intelligence, by the way, so I'm not that old.
But fortunately, you also understand human stupidity, which is important as well. But my point is that to us, information used to be the thread with which we used to weave the fabric of knowledge, so to speak. Is that assault of information blurring that line?
No. So what's happening is, because there are so many sources, you're like, there are millions of publications and news channels and news sources, and now, like I said, you don't even have to go to Google. You just go to artificial intelligence and ask what's happening, and why is there a war coming, right? Now the point is that ultimately, I think young people are also smart enough to figure out that not everything that's spat out of ChatGPT or any of these artificial intelligence sources are necessarily true. Like, for example, yesterday we ran this thing saying it said former President Trump. Clearly, it's not updated yet to reflect that Trump is back in the White House.
Sure.
So it depends really on what your prompts are and stuff like that. So I think the relevance of traditional media, news channels like CNN-News18 or large publications is that we've been doing this for a long time, and news at the end of the day is the same thing, right? You want to know what has happened around you. You want to know why it's important. You want to know why you should pay attention, whether it is a 1-minute reel or whether it's a 8-minute video, whatever it is.
So let me put this question to you. Today, if you were to have to sacrifice speed at the altar of responsibility, would that be a decision that you take, or would that be a conundrum?
No, we take that decision every day. I mean, because at the end of the day, we can't afford to go wrong. Not least because people make screenshots and make fun of us on Twitter. But I mean, that aside, at the end of the day, what's the value that we bring? The value that we bring is as gatekeepers, right? We're filtering out the information that is wrong. We're filtering out the information that is not required. We're filtering out the information that is incorrect, right? We're giving you the information. If, for example, if we are flashing something on our channel, then we are dead sure that this is right, because if it's not right, somebody will lose their job, right? There is accountability for it.
Sure.
That's not there in social media. I mean, you can put up whatever you want to put up on Instagram. I mean, they say they have their filters and they have their fact checks and stuff. I mean, Facebook, for example, has stopped fact checking.
Yeah.
They don't do fact checks anymore.
Absolutely.
So I think we're increasingly moving to a world where there's going to be lots of sources of information, and as a result of that, a lot of confusion as well. So what young people are going to do is to turn to sources that they can trust, establishments that they can trust, brands that they're like, okay, अगर CNN News 18 पे आ गया तो then ठीक है, मतलब it's believable, right? It's true. I think that's what brands like us.
You used a wonderful term called gatekeepers. You said that you have to be, and that's the thing. We're living in a world of this or that, while traditionally our heritage has been this and that, which also means debate. I mean, the fact that I've read somewhere that the Shankaracharya had to go to every mutt and defeat them in their ideology so that he would understand, or he or she would understand what various ideologies were. This is where we come from. The level of debate that we see today on news channels, let's use an English understatement, is not really ideal, is it?
No, so look, historically in India, we've had this whole tradition of Vad and Samvad.
Exactly.
Right? I mean, it's always been part of our culture.
Yes.
So when you see loud talking, panelists or guests in these matchbox windows, it comes from somewhere. It comes from the fact that we have this as part of our culture. These nukkad sabhas that we have has always been part of our history.
Sure.
I mean, whether it's in the north or in the south. The addas that you have in Kolkata, for example. That's where people, gather and they talk, and different people have different points of view. And which is why I say, one of the great ideals which we will always have and which we should cherish and protect is our democratic ideal. We cannot be any other form of system, right?
Sure.
Because we are, as Amartya Sen said, we are the argumentative Indians.
Oh,
I mean,
absolutely.
If you're not argumentative, then what are we?
Then, and now, of course, onto that thorny little word called an agenda. The debate and the agenda, two sides of a very, very finely balanced balance, so to speak.
Yeah. So I think the important thing, Sarthak, is like, look, this whole thing about all news being objective, I don't think so. I mean, all news is subjective. I mean, you have a point of view, I have a point of view. Everybody, our listeners who are listening to this conversation have a point of view. So your idea of news is informed, or let's say, for a slightly stronger word, even biased from that subjectivity, right? So when you have a debate and you have 5 different people sort of arguing and talking about a topic, it's natural that 5 people have 5 different points of view. And at the end of the day, the anchor is also a human being. I mean, the anchor is not this robot who says, okay, A, you go, you have 30 seconds. B, you go, you have 30 seconds. No, I mean, the anchor also is as much involved in that debate. And I think it's perfectly okay for the anchor to take a position on a debate, as long as you make that clear up front, as long as you tell your viewers that, look, this is an issue. There are different strands, there are different thoughts, etc., etc. But this is what I believe in, and also not try to impose that on other people on the show.
It's a thin line, isn't it?
It is a thin line.
Yeah.
It is a thin line. It's a difficult one. It's one that all of us have to walk night after night, and it's not an easy one.
And I'm sure it must be fatiguing. So when Zakka Jacob, the managing editor, gets home and wears his pajamas, how do you unwind? I know that music is a big part of your life. Is that still the case?
Oh yeah. So I started in radio. I mean, you know this,
Yeah.
but your viewers don't. I started in All India Radio.
Listeners, Zakka. Listeners.
Oh yeah. Sorry about that.
Yes.
I know, right? That's what.
The absolute unalloyed joy
Yeah.
of correcting an anchor.
That's what 20 years of television does to you. It's not listeners. Yeah.
Excuses, Zakka, excuses, but do carry on.
So I started in All India Radio, and it was a drive-in show. So people could. It was in the evenings. It was 6 to 9. People who were driving back home after work could call in and ask for music, ask for a song, and somehow we just had it. I mean, the CDs were always there. You didn't have to, Google it, and you didn't have to, Spotify it and so on.
Yeah.
And I had a radio jock name.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was not called Zakka Jacob.
Then?
I was called the Zackster.
The Zackster.
It was a rip-off from Napster.
Yeah.
Which I know kids these days have no idea what Napster is, but it was basically a music piracy, software.
Basically, it was a generation's expletive to the gatekeepers of of music, saying that we will go the wrong way because we are rebels.
Let's say it was the illegal version of Spotify from 25 years ago.
And you were a rebel, Zakka.
Oh, well, I'm not sure about that.
Yeah.
But yeah, quickly. So at that time, this is sort of late 90s, right? And this was when I started working, but even as a kid, as you're growing up, at that time, there was just 2 kinds of music, or you wanted to be identified as following either of 2 kinds of music. Either you were listening to the rock bands, the metal bands, it was like you said, AC/DC and Metallica and Guns N' Roses and all of that. Or you were a Michael Jackson fan.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
I mean, Michael Jackson, to my mind, there's music before him and there's music after him. I don't think the sound that he managed to capture,
Absolutely.
anyone's quite done it the way he did.
He, I think, was the last superstar that we had in a true
Yeah,
sense.
I mean, my kid will say Taylor Swift and all of
But we know
all of
the
the
truth.
kids these days. But yeah, Michael was Michael. I mean, he was incredible. I don't think there's
still listen to him?
anyone. Very rarely. Sometimes. So the other thing, I didn't know this. So my daughter tells me that a lot of the Queen songs, for example, are now back in vogue. So she was listening to Another One Bites the Dust the other day, and I'm like, what? This is like when I was in school. Why are you listening to the song? Don't you have any songs of your own?
I tell you, the timelessness of things is done from the heart, and one would assume that's what your CV would also say. Things done from the heart. Because
So yeah, like, some of the songs that really. The first time when I heard "Smells Like Teen Spirit," I was like, "This is something else."
Yeah.
And I know you guys are promoting Guns N' Roses.
Yeah.
I mean, popular songs, of course. One of the first songs that I heard of them, I didn't hear it on a CD or a cassette. I heard a friend of mine sing this in school in the auditorium. November Rain.
Oh.
And I was like, that can't be Guns N' Roses. They're not into these love ballads and cold
Absolutely.
November Rain. But so you were either in the metal camp or you were in the Michael camp. So
Clearly, clearly.
That's
It's important. It's important to sort of underline the things that you are sort of helming, and one of them happens to be, I am told by the right people, one screen, one form, one stream. That's very poetic, and I'm sure it has a lovely management impact as well. Do you want to tell us a little about that?
It's simple. I mean, it's viewers. I mean, it's what viewers have been asking us for, right? I mean, we're producing all this content. With obviously the primary source of consumption for us is television. But if a lot of viewers are moving away from television to watching stuff on their smartphones, then you need to have production of that same content for one screen, one form, one stream. A lot of content is getting streamed, for example, now on YouTube. We have almost 10 million subscribers, or 9 million something. And a lot of them are consuming content which we don't necessarily put on TV alone. Right? I mean, so there's a lot of content that we as a channel are generating or producing, which is catering to an audience that's probably not watching television, or that's probably moved on from television. So we're producing that for YouTube, we're producing that for Instagram, and that's why ultimately, we are I hate to use this word, but we are a content producing factory. We're a content manufacturing factory. Whether you consume that on the mobile screen or you're watching it on connected TV, ultimately, the credibility of the brand is why you're coming and watching us. You're consuming what we're putting out there.
Does it sometimes irk this this equivalence of news with content? Because where we come from, it was something that was sacred. It was something that we held on a pedestal, so to speak.
Yeah.
And now I'm sure the vagaries of the market and the exigencies of survival exercise that kind of power. Is it not? As a news person, again, and not as part of an organization, is that a question that you ask yourself sometimes?
No, so for example, Sarthak, I think hard news is always going to be our bread and butter, right? That's why people are coming in watching CNN-News18. They're not coming to ask us what lip gloss we recommend, right? Like again, I can't come back because this is the mahal right now. Everybody wants to know, what's going to happen. India, Pakistan, is there a war that's going to break out? And that is something that is our specialty. I mean, that's why people are coming to us. If something were to happen, what do we do? Right? So we're doing a story, for example, this week. Bunkers. Do apartment complexes, for example, have bomb shelters? What should you do? Should you go to the basement? Should you go to a storeroom? What essentials should you carry? There's something called a go bag. So you fill it up with the basics that you need, some basic packaged food and water, a little bit of cash, which is always helpful.
Always.
So these are the kinds of things that people are wanting to know. Like I said, they're not coming to us to know which is the best place you get chaat in Film City,
which we can tell you about anyway. I mean that's another kind of news that we will share with you. But finally, Zakka, there is the question is the bedrock of all news, is it not? Would you agree? What are your views on the relevance and A lot of people have said that asking questions right now has become a bit of a courageous act. What are your views on that?
No, so Sarthak, I mean, you know this. I mean, you've been in television news. The whole, 4Ws and H.
Yeah.
So who, what, where, why. I mean, the whole system is built around questions. And I'm always curious about the why question, because the why question then answers a whole bunch of other things. I mean, the who, where, what, those are questions you can always sort of figure out. You can Google it and stuff.
Sure.
But the why question, I mean, why is something happening? Why is there this face-off that's happening between these two countries? Or why is, the why question is where news channels, I think, need to be moving to. And that's our utility now.
Sure.
Why should you pay attention to what I'm saying? Because this has happened and this is why it's important, and you need to know why this has happened. So I think the why question to me is the most fascinating thing in journalism. And that will always be there, right? You can't take that away from journalism, because if you're not explaining and if you're not saying the answer to the why question, then why are you there?
Yeah.
I mean, what's your reason for existence?
For sure.
Right?
Absolutely.
So I think human beings will always be curious. You can't take that away. Curiosity is an inbuilt feature. We're wired that way. So as long as that curiosity is there, I think the news business will survive. It will flourish. It will thrive. In what form, shape, stream that you consume that's a different thing.
Absolutely. And that is why it's important to know that it's okay to ask questions, because there are no wrong questions. Answers, we've had some of them from the wonderful Zakka Jacob, and we would like to thank you very, very much for your generosity and the open-heartedness with which you've answered the questions that we had to pose. So that means a whole lot to us. So
Thank you, Sarthak. Thank you. It was like coming back 25 years. and this is fun. I would kill for a radio station like this.
I tell you, the ageless charm of radio. If you haven't tasted it, then stay, won't you? That's Zakka Jacob, ladies and gentlemen, managing editor of CNN-News18. Number one for 3 years in a row. And if you're asking why, you're asking the right questions. We are taking a break and coming right back. You stay, okay?
94.3 Radio 1.